I like investing in people more so than I like investing in ideas, because I truly believe that you can have an unbelievable product, a not so great team and not so great founder, and fail miserably. And I also believe that you can have so great product and a phenomenal team and a phenomenal founder, guys who can sell, guys who are like-minded and guys who are just absolute, killers for lack of a better term.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
And today we got my good friend, Dalton Crossan here. He is the freaking man. When I first met him, I basically looked at him as if he was the Rock from Ballers because of, what he's going to get into today. So, Dalton, welcome to the show, bro.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. Looking forward to it.
So can you tell people a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, how you're doing it, and I guess a little bit of why?
Yeah, sounds good. I'll just kind of get into a brief background, and then kind of leading up to, what I'm doing today and where I'm spending my time. So, originally born Long Island, New York. Really, my first career and passion was as an athlete. I played everything growing up. Wound up playing Division I college football, and parlayed that into a short NFL career. Played about 2.5, 3 years post college with the Indianapolis Colts and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a running back. Wound up not being able to stay healthy, unfortunately. They always say NFL stands for not for long. So, wound up transitioning out in really 2019, 2020, and was figuring out what I was going to do, kind of what that next career path was going to be, right? I think I always adopted the mindset of I could take everything that made me great at football and great at sports and just pick it up and move it over to something else. And, discipline, work ethic, coachability. I can go through and name probably 1,000 adjectives, so really took that mindset and just said, let's go figure out what that next football is, what that next thing is going to be. And let's go all in and, let's try and be the best in the world at whatever it is that I'm doing is something that I'm, that I always shoot for, very competitive by nature and always wanting to excel in whatever I'm doing. So that first thing that I kind of fell into post football was insurance and risk management. There's a company based here in New York City, which is where I'm located, called Hotaling Insurance Services, which is a risk management family office, essentially, is kind of how we market ourselves, meaning we operate like a traditional multifamily office does, in the sense of kind of being the one-stop shop for high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals, families, business owners, etc. And do work with a ton of athletes and entertainers as well. But we only operate in the world of insurance and risk management. So unlike a traditional multifamily office, we don't do investments or, stock bond portfolio, private equity, nothing like that, just insurance. But when you're dealing with that type of clientele, it can get pretty extensive from a life insurance perspective, estate planning, commercial property and casualty insurance, personal lines, homes, cars, boats, planes, etc., employee benefits and health insurance for their companies. So that's blanket level what Hotaling Insurance is. And then just kind of to fast forward a little bit through that's where I started, and I've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years, and I'm still involved with that company, on a pretty regular basis. However, I've also been very involved in venture capital, the venture capital world as an angel investor, as well as private equity, real estate investing, and in the venture capital side of things, I had made that connection to a big firm out of Silicon Valley through my football days, through my agent actually made that introduction for me my rookie year. I started to then learn more about the asset class, meet people and network in those ecosystems, wound up making a few direct investments. And then that only has continued to expand as the years have gone on, where to this point I've probably invested in 15 plus companies, mostly in the early stage tech space, a few different, there's a community bank that I've invested in, worked pretty closely with, a couple consumer type companies. I'm actually wearing the hat right now, but just bought into the ownership group of a Major League Pickleball franchise, which has been a lot of fun. So very active as it relates to that kind of stuff as well. Then one of the companies I invested in about a year ago, which is an early stage AI machine learning company, really at its core, geospatial intelligence company, where a lot of our team's background is defense and intelligence and doing a lot of crazy stuff with geospatial technology. to see patterns on the planet and what's happening on the planet, and then turn that into something actionable for decision makers at companies to actually act on and make decisions on. And the last thing I'll say is that I invested in that company a year ago, saw what was happening slowly month by month, and saw the opportunity was massive. So was very excited that I invested, but then also knew that I wanted to be more involved. So I took on an advisory role at that company. And then as of about 3 months ago, took on a full-time executive and head of sales role at that company, which I'd say is probably where I'm spending a large majority of my time, and really have been for the last 6+ months. Is that company. 90+% of my time is probably allocated there. And then still, an equity partner at hoteling at the insurance company is, so aligned in that way. And I'm still able to operate there on the insurance side of things, but more so in a just talk concept, sell, and then dish off all of the busy work, all of the day-to-day. We have a 200-person firm here, so I'm really able to delegate a lot of that busy work from a day-to-day perspective. And yeah, that's me.
I love it, dude. There's so much to dive into. So we got 4 major points I think we're gonna hit. Time in being an NFL player, being an owner of the Rancheros. Is that
Ranchers,
it?
Texas Ranchers. Yep.
Okay, the Ranchers. Then you have the AI company, and then you have your insurance. So, Shane, which one do you want to dive into first? I love all of them.
Well, I think the better question is like, what are you not doing with your time?
He's also wait. He forgot one thing. Can I expose you real quick?
Go ahead, go for it.
He's a new girl dad.
Yes, by far the most important. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. We're all girl dads here.
We're all girl dads.
I love that. Yeah, my baby is 12 days old today. So
very big congratulations.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Is this your first?
Yep, first baby. Yeah.
Enjoy the lack of sleep. The fact that you're able to juggle all this and
Dude,
still be on this podcast.
I appreciate it, but I keep telling people, I don't know, it may switch, but she's been a phenomenal sleeper. My sleep schedule has not changed one bit in the first 2 weeks.
Can we cuss on this channel?
Yeah. F you. Yeah, we'll see, man. She's been a great sleeper. My wife is an absolute superhero, and she's been amazing. But even my wife hasn't, her sleep schedule's obviously changed. She's waking up to feed the baby in the middle of the night, but she's been sleeping in 3 to 4 hour spurts and doing pretty well. So we'll see how it progresses. But yeah, as of now, we're cross fingers doing pretty well.
I mean, that's the best you can do. We have 2 kids, and one of them was exactly like that, and the other one was the horror stories that I'm telling you right now. But I kind of want to dive into what I think is most fascinating, especially to our viewers. There's not a lot of people that know how to invest specifically within company. So I want to how do you figure out which investments to make? Obviously, you started out by trusting your agent who was already qualified with investments or with business opportunities. So you trusted his guidance. After getting your hands in, what do you look for where you're like, I need to invest my money with this company, let alone now I want to invest money and time, which is even more valuable in my eyes. So how do you decide what you want to invest in? What do you look for in these business investments?
That's a great question. And I can answer it a few different ways, and I will. I'll weave them together. I think at the highest level, and I was actually thinking about this earlier today. I think at the highest level, I operate my life in general, and even more so in the business world, on instinct and intuition. I think it's the most important thing for me. And that's just the gut feeling really that you have. And that might be from football where, you go and ask a running back at things that are happening, especially at like the NFL level, like, how did you hit that hole and decide to make that cut in 0.02 seconds? Like, it's so instinctual. And I've operated my whole athlete career. Just like you go ask me what I did on the field and I have no idea. Like it's just so autopilot and it's so subconscious. So I like to trust that gut instinct as well in business, and it's served me, and in investing, and it's served me well thus far. So with that, it's definitely the feeling that you get. And obviously it's never like let's have one phone call and this company's raising money and I decide to invest right there. Like it's never that, right? So I definitely do due diligence and go through the process. So it's people, right? And it's the entrepreneur and it's the founder and that's like, I like investing in people more so than I like investing in ideas, because I truly believe that you can have an unbelievable product, a not so great team and not so great founder, and fail miserably. And I also believe that you can have a not so great product and a phenomenal team and a phenomenal founder, guys who can sell, guys who are like-minded and guys who are just absolute, killers for lack of a better term. And, those are the guys that I like to back and align myself with. So that's the first part of the question. The second part, or the first part of the answer, the second part of the answer is probably knowing what I know and knowing what I'm really good at and staying in that lane, and then surrounding myself with experts in all of the other spaces, right? At the highest level, I'm a networking guy. I'm a network guy. I'm a sales guy. I'm a dot connector, right? I'm a marketer. Like, I don't want to be an expert in real estate investing. I don't want to learn how to underwrite a deal and vet a deal like at a super high level. Obviously, as I go and as I have more of these conversations, I just naturally pick up on things and can speak the language. But really what I look to do is just align myself with the experts in the tech space, in the AI space, in the venture space. And now I have many of those that I've built through, a decade almost of being in business and building these relationships. Same thing goes for real estate. Same thing goes for private equity, right? I know insurance. I know life insurance because that's, our company and where I spent my first 5 years of business really spending, a large chunk of so I'll go design my own life insurance, but I'm not going to go and vet a real estate deal, a venture capital tech deal, a private equity deal by myself and decide to invest or not to invest. I'm going to heavily lean on the people that I know that are trusted sources that I've known for a long time, that are experts in those individual spaces. And again, obviously use my intuition and, my gut instinct and my, my instincts on those to help me make those decisions. But, I'd say at a high level, that's really kind of how I'm vetting those opportunities and ultimately deciding whether or not to invest.
See, this is exactly why we bring this up almost all the time here on this show, because networking and dealing with people, as far as like a face-to-face basis, I feel like is going away. It's not how it used to be in the 80s. You would deal with somebody in the golf course and a sales deal was done. So you learn something as far as insurance and you can design your own policy. I love that. But you go with your instincts, your gut feeling, when you're buying an actual business. And when you get to that level, that's what it really comes, right? It's like this master form of delegation. You don't have to have your hands deep into everything. If you can meet people that are great at something that they do that you know nothing about, and they can sell you on exactly why you should invest in me, it's a no-brainer.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I look for in businesses as well.
Yep. That's like, to that point, it's funny because even when you mentioned earlier, like, what are you not doing? And like, oh, it sounds like I'm doing so much, like, and I am, but I'm also really not. Like, I'm just networking. I'm meeting people. I'm having conversations. I'm traveling. I'm going to events. I'm accumulating as many puzzle pieces, right? Like, for example, like I'd be a puzzle piece of your guys. You guys are puzzle pieces of mine. The more like-minded, entrepreneurial based, people that are doing really cool things across all different industries, like that's who I'm looking to meet. That's who I'm looking to have conversations with. And then I figure out when and where and how to connect those dots, right? And create mutually accretive value across the board. But like, I'm not looking to, that's why I said, like, I don't like to operate real estate. Like I could go buy an Airbnb and go do, but that's a lot of work. That's a full-time job. I'd rather spend the time doing what I'm doing and find the real estate operators that have track records that I trust, that are absolute studs in different markets that are doing that, and give them 20% of the promote, right? Of the, LPGP structure, come in as an LP, because I know that the 80% or the 70% that I'm going to make based on giving them the keys and letting them do what they do is going to be way more, or more, most likely I'm going to make a higher return doing it that way than trying to go do it myself. And okay, what market do I buy in? How do I underwrite this? What property manager do I use? It's just so much that goes into it. And I'd rather just, number one, save the time, right? That of not doing that. And I'd rather take the 70 or 80% on, the guy that I know and trust can get me a return.
Vin, you brought me my twin. This
You're
is
welcome.
exactly why I pay real estate agents. I don't negotiate their fee, their top percentage. This is exactly why I give consultants their top fee, because if they're great at what they're going to do, they're going to continue to bring me great deals, and because they know that I'm going to treat them well. I have the best question that's going to segue this, and this is what people really want to know. So to get to this point, you have to do a lot of grunt work. You have to do a lot of shit yourself. You have to build up your net worth and network to get to a point where you can make these investment opportunities, these business decisions. So, what advice can you give to our listeners who are going through those early hustler entrepreneur stages to get to a point where we can finally get our time back to do whatever the F we want? Whether it's investments, spend time with the family, buy businesses, or all the above?
Another phenomenal question. Yeah. I love that one because I don't believe that there's a secret formula, silver bullet answer to that, right? It's not like, okay, read this book and you're going to be set. Like it's literally just activity. It's activity, 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 day in, day out. Discipline, which is one of my favorite words, right? Which is doing the shit that you don't want to do. For me, like that starts with the gym and starts with my health, right? Like I'm never missing my cold plunge in the morning, my workout in the morning, my steam room. Like it's just so regimented. And there's so many times where I don't want to do that, right? Every morning you wake up at 5 in the morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock, whatever. Like there's so many times that you don't want to do that, but just making that promise to yourself and sticking with it and doing it just reaffirms subconsciously like, okay, I'm a winner, right? I'm going to do this, versus the opposite. If you're continuously saying I'm going to get up at 6 and go work out, and again, it doesn't have to be working out, that's just what it is for me. But if you say that and promise yourself that every morning, or you say you're going to do it 4 times a week, and then the alarm clock goes off and it's like, well, because we all have that voice, right? The alarm clock goes off and it's, well, I'm really tired and I stayed up late last night, I'll just I'll skip today and I'll do it tomorrow. Like you're just reaffirming that. Again, it might sound harsh, but I'm a loser. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be successful. Like it's subconsciously, and that's where your confidence then starts to take a hit over time. You do that enough, you're not going to succeed. Again, in my opinion. So I think it really comes down to just being disciplined, knowing what you want to do, believing that you can accomplish it. Right, that's where it all starts. It all starts in the mind, and believing that you can do whatever you want to do. I mean, it's true. If you, the guy, what's that phrase? The person that says that they can and the person that says that they can are both usually right? Like it doesn't matter what it is, what the task is. I'm going to be worth $10 billion. Okay, well, you're never going to do that unless you start with actually believing it is going to happen and living like it already is true, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, I don't think there's a secret sauce, a secret formula. I think it comes down to just being active, putting one foot in front of the other, seeking out mentorship, not being afraid to fail, not being afraid of rejection, staying disciplined, and just literally going through day by day by day. And then all of a sudden you look back 3 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, and you're in a spot that's much closer to what you just described, Shane, than you were 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
I love it, man. I definitely have a question for. I really love the insurance side because one, I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that that's how a lot of people that are high net worth and really successful business owners start moving their money differently. Because one of the things that I've really spent a lot of time learning about is the movement of money. That money is always moving. The problem that most people have is that they're moving it in the wrong direction. So can you share a little bit of the sauce of how high net worth individuals and people who are getting into different types of policies you offer, how could they really benefit from them?
Yeah, it's another great question, and I can give you, the high level on just cash value life insurance in general as a tool, as a financial tool, and then I can also give you real life examples of actually good timing because I just used and leveraged my life insurance, my cash value life insurance policy for the first time, to invest in something else. So I'll kind of walk through that, but. I'm sure a lot of people, especially now with TikTok and social media, there's a lot of buzzwords out there and there's a lot of influencers, quote unquote, that are explaining this stuff. And I've seen it all over the place. So, be your own bank or infinite banking are two very commonly used phrases when talking about cash value life insurance. And that truly is kind of what it is, right? So let's say I'm funding an index universal life insurance policy or a whole life insurance policy. Those are probably your two most common, right, permanent cash value life insurance vehicles. Most people think, what's life insurance? Oh, I die, my family gets money, right? And that's term insurance, but there's a lot of other ways to do it that, again, isn't taught in college. It's not taught in school, right? Most people don't understand it unless you've run into it, unless you've bumped into someone who's selling it or explaining it. But let's say I'm funding whatever the number is, $5,000 a year, 10, 100, $500,000 a year into a cash value life insurance. The way that mine works is it's an index universal life insurance. So that's tied to something like the S&P 500, right? So that's how I get my market exposure. I do most of my public market exposure is through my cash value life insurance vehicles. A lot of the other stuff I do on the equity side is private, is private investment. But so if I'm funding that with, call it $100,000 a year, my policy's averaging, the S&P averages 8, 9, 9.5% a year, right, over a long period of time. So my cash is just growing and compounding over however long of a period of time. Let's just say fast forward 5, 10, 20 years into the future, I'm sitting with, $5 million of cash value in my policy, right? This is where the benefit comes in, is that I can then go and, let's say I want to invest in a company or I want to invest in a real estate, property. I can take, let's call it $1 million, but I'm not actually taking the $1 million out of the policy. I'm taking what would be called a participating policy loan. That $2 million then goes into my real estate deal, as an example. My money is now working for me on the real estate side of things, right? I'm getting my property appreciation over time. I'm generating cash flow. I'm getting the tax benefit, depreciation that comes with investing in real estate. But that year, my life insurance policy generated an 8% rate of return. My money grows 8% on 5 million, not 8% on 3 million, because I never actually pulled that 2 million out of the policy. I just took a policy loan. The loan with most insurance carriers can never exceed 5% on the interest rate. So even if rates have gone crazy like we saw over the past few years, right, and people are taking mortgages at 9%, right, 10%, whatever that number is, I can always borrow the money from my life insurance policy at 5% or less. When I do that, it's also not like a traditional bank loan. Like if I want to go, take a home equity line of credit or borrow against my stock portfolio, like you have to go to a bank. That's going to be a relatively long process. You got to fill out paperwork, right? You got to do all this stuff. This is just snap your fingers, go onto your app, click, I want to take a loan from my own life insurance policy, and the money's wired to you in a day or two. So it's very easy in terms of, there's no friction there. And then you don't have to ever pay that loan back if you don't want to, or you don't have to pay the interest off either if you don't want to, because what's going to happen is now I have a $2 million loan balance, but that's secured by the death benefit, right? So in my life insurance policy, if I have $5 million of cash, let's just say I have a $7 million gross death benefit at that time. If I want to pay the interest off, I can pay it off. If I want to pay principal down and pay the $2 million principal down, I can do that if I want to. I don't have to. And if I want to do that, I can do that over whatever schedule that I want. I can not pay anything for 5 years, and then all of a sudden, the real estate asset that I invested in sold and I made 3x my money. I can go and pay the full loan off then if I want. I can pay half of it. The point that I'm trying to make is there's no schedule on how or when or if you ever even have to pay that back. And then what would happen is, let's just say, God forbid, I took that loan out the next year, I got hit by a bus. The $7 million death benefit would pay off that $2 million loan plus whatever interest has accrued over that, year time period. And my family would get the $5 million or so death benefit that's remaining. So it's secured by the death benefit, and again, you don't have to pay that loan off if you don't want to, because the death benefit would pay it off whenever you die, whether that's a year, 5 years, or 50 years. So I just took a loan. I've been funding my life insurance policy for 3 years now, maybe. So I'm finally at the point where I have a somewhat significant amount of cash in there, and I'm investing more money into a community bank that I invested in about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They're raising another financing round at a much higher valuation. So I'm investing more money there, and I'm also investing into a private equity fund that my brother actually owns and operates. And I'm doing that with a loan for my life insurance policy. And the way that my brain thinks about that is like, I'm liquid enough. Like I can go and invest the amount of money with cash that's sitting in my bank account if I wanted to, but I'm conservatively thinking I'll probably make 30 to 40% in the bank investment, over a 5 to 10 year time period. And I'm thinking my brother is the most conservative person in the world when it comes to finances. And based on what they've done with the companies that they've already acquired that we'll have exposure to in this private equity fund, he's projecting, I think it was like a 42% IRR over a 10-year time period. So if I can borrow money from somebody else that I don't ever have to pay back, or I can just pay the interest off at 5% and generate 30, 20, 30, 40%, right? It's just arbitrage. I'm in a positive arbitrage situation there, and I'm making the difference on somebody else's money, while my money that's sitting in the life insurance policy is still growing and compounding in the S&P 500, right? So now I'm making money. I'm making money in two places instead of one by letting that money sit there and borrow against it. So yeah, I know that was a lot there, but hopefully it was easy-ish for the listeners to comprehend.
Shane sold.
Well, I mean, I have these. So, but this is what the 1%, this is what the rich are doing, right? They're not using their money. They're borrowing against themselves. They're borrowing from other people. I mean, this is almost
tax-free, and it's tax-free. Right? Yeah.
Right. So there's multiple policies, and to be honest, I feel like every single life insurance person should literally take Dalton's explanation, write it down exactly, because that's exactly how it is. There's whole life, there's IULs, there's VULs, and everybody's and their father is selling IULs right now. Yeah. I'd make sure to do some extra research. At this point, once you've made it past a certain year mark, or whatever you're putting in, let's just use the 100K example, your money is still guaranteed, and there's even riskier percentages in that 8 to 10% that Dalton's talking about is a very safe bet. And you can even do it if the S&P doesn't make money, which, I mean, when's the last time in the last 50 years that it hasn't, produced a good solid percentage? There's ways that you don't have to take a loss on. So I thought the explanation that you said was very well done. There is, I think personally, for the investment strategy, when you're taking money out and you're using it for the things that you can use it for, like real estate, I think it's a no-brainer to do that. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? It's taking away from the death benefit. There's super big pros to paying it back, so you can continue the investment portion of it and continue being and building your own bank. Honestly, your explanation was 101, very straightforward. Every single person should be doing this. It's exactly what everybody, as far as the wealthy, are saying. This is it. This is the blueprint. Yeah. Write it down. I can't cuss on here. Write it down and start doing it.
Yeah, and life insurance is a great way to do it, but it's, I mean, any asset, right? Like that, I always look for, obviously, there's things like venture capital where it's, a lot, you can't leverage it, but those are the, home runs that you're looking to hit, right? It might be locked up for a long period of time, but those are the early stage tech things where you're looking to 10x, 50x, 100x your money over a relatively short period of time. But my other bucket is always focused on, what assets can I buy and invest in that I can leverage at a relatively high LTV? Because that's where the arbitrage is made, especially if you have the opportunity to invest in higher yielding things. Like if you can get 15, 20% in a real estate deal, 20%, whatever that number is, you're going to be able to borrow at less than that. So, if you can do that with relatively low risk, it's a fucking no-brainer. Sorry, no cursing.
So that's just going to be the new name of this. Sorry, no cursing. So the life insurance is just one portion of the arsenal, right? Because there's so many things like this as far as, Roths or short-term pensions or even 401ks that you shouldn't touch for 5, 10, 25 years till you retire. I'm not saying I'm a believer in 401k, but it has its tax benefit. But it needs to be a portion of what you're currently, right? Having your money work for you is a great way to build endless wealth. Now, utilizing that insurance policy, your money, while it's also growing compound interest, using it to build other assets to upbuild your diverse portfolio is a very smart way of having your money work for you instead of you working for your money.
100%. I look at every dollar that right? So I'm very passionate and obviously love earning the money, right? Which is, you're trading your time for money. That's a huge part of it. You can't invest anything or do anything with it if you don't earn it first, right? Actively. But then as you're earning more and more active income, like my real obsession is learning about all these different asset classes, connecting and networking with all these guys that are experts in these spaces that have track records, and deploying that capital in a diversified way. Again, like you said, Shane, you're putting that money to work. Think of every dollar that you earn as an employee of yours. Do I want my employees sitting around doing nothing, or do I want my employees out working and building something? right? But then it's another part of the conversation, which comes down to networking, meeting experts in these individual spaces, doing your own research online, right, to actually learn about the benefits and the pitfalls and, the pros and cons of all these different asset classes, and figuring out and kind of, working with experts in the space, obviously financial advisors, insurance guys, private equity guys, whatever, but really just, wanting to understand and ask a million questions and figure out kind of, once you have a good understanding at what all these asset classes do and what the pros and cons are, build your own diversified portfolio. Some people want to take more risk. Some people want to take less risk, right? That part of it is personalized, and it depends on the individual. Yeah. You definitely are going to want to learn, even if you make $100,000 a year, even if you make $80,000 a year, like, don't just, whatever money you do have, there are ways to put it to work. And you don't have to be investing $500,000 a year into these things, right? It literally can be investing $50 a month, $100 a month, $500 a month, right? If that's what you have and that's what your budget is, better off starting that sooner than later because of compounding interest. And I hope most people understand, who called it? I forgot who called it. Maybe Buffett, the eighth wonder of the world, right? Is compounding interest.
I love it. Hey, I want to jump into one other thing. I think it's really, really cool that you have we're called the 1% podcast, right? You have a 1% lifestyle, but you've always, to some degree, had that. You were in the NFL. You were a 1%er already, or I believe that's probably even smaller than 1%, right? What's one of the biggest things that you found that it took to really get to that position, to be amongst the 0.1%, maybe? What would you say it was for you?
Man, again, a lot of different answers to that, and I think some of it goes back to one of the ways I answered the last question is discipline, is work ethic. I've always, I'm blessed for sure with athletic ability, with my parents, with the way that I was raised, and just some of the gifts that God blessed me with, but I've always just been ultra competitive, and and this was going back to like my young years, where my parents literally almost had to put me in like child therapy and psychology classes because of every time I would lose in like a second grade basketball game, I would scream and kick and cry and not know how to control my emotions at that point. And like I'd lose to my brother in ping pong in the backyard and break paddles, and like they almost thought it was a problem. But also that's really funny too, because my dad just sent me a video yesterday or 2 days ago of Gary Vee, who said, "You show me a 6-year-old who loses a baseball game and cries, I'll show you an effing winner." And then he said, and any parent that comes up to that kid after the game and says, "Oh, don't worry, Johnny, it's just a game, it's fine," that parent should be punched in the face. Those were literally Gary's words, and that we're demonizing competition, and I think we are, and this whole everybody gets a trophy, and right, I mean, you can go on and on, but yeah, I've just always been naturally, for whatever reason, ultra competitive, and I've always wanted to be the absolute best in the world at whatever I was doing, and for a long part of my life that was football and that was sports. But then, like I explained before, once that part of my life was over, it was just, let's pick up everything that I learned in the 25 years of doing this, and let's just move it somewhere else. But it's exactly the same, other than the game that I'm playing is different, but everything that goes into that is exactly the same. So yeah, that's my answer to it.
That's even the crazier part, though. I mean, you talk about a 22, 23-year-old signing a contract of, this money that they've never even seen before. And you hear all these horror stories of just like the lotto winners, where they weren't raised with money. So what do? They buy cars, they buy home jewelry, they spend it on clubs and men and women and, whatever they're into. And then it's gone in 3 years, and then they're bankrupt. The fact that you were able to, come from this, even a short career in the NFL, you were able to take what you had, you learned it, and you're like, okay, well, instead of beating myself up about this, what's my next venture? And you went all in on it. And now you're here 4 years later, 3 years later, 5 years later, was it 24?
20, yeah, 5. Call it 5, yeah.
Yeah, that's unreal, especially for where you're at. I've been an entrepreneur for 12 years since I left the corporate world, and like I just started getting this diverse portfolio 3 or 4 years ago. You beat me in half. Like I thought I was competitive. Like F you, no cursing in here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, brother. Again, it's crazy because like it goes back to the last question too. Is like, how did you do that? there's no answer to it. I just worked. That's it. I just put my head down and worked. And then all of a sudden you keep taking steps and steps and steps up the mountain, and you're not like, and then all of a sudden every once in a while you look back and it's like, wow, I've come pretty far. But at the end of the day, like if we're talking, Mount Everest and going back to my competitive nature, like I didn't even start climbing the mountain in my eyes.
Right.
I didn't even start. I'm still a tiny little pipsqueak in terms of,
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But look at the one word that he said. If you're not watching it here, he said work.
Work. That's it,
he
man.
worked. He worked his ass off.
And that's a thing too, because my wife is comes from like the professional. It's similar to Vin. You met my wife, right? So from the personal development world, Bob Proctor and Tony Robbins and like mindset stuff, which I'm a ultimate believer in. And like my life and everything has shifted over the past 2 years, really since I met my wife and started to like, I've always been like what they call me, like an unconscious competent, like somebody who just has like naturally done some of these things. And I'm sure it's very similar with both of you guys as well. Like, a lot of people that come from that world, like never have succeeded in anything. And they really have to work to shift their mind around and to believe in themselves and to like, and it takes a lot of work, a lot of personal work and development. But I've seen stories of people that have come from that, and done the work and are now finding, ultra levels of the thing with me in some of the personal development world, and not a lot of it. But there's some people that believe like, okay, like let me just close my eyes and envision a Ferrari, like, and a Ferrari's going to come, right? Like the mental part is where it starts for sure. And I think that you need that part of it. But at the end of the day, it was that word that you just held up, Shane. It's work. At the end of the day, it's work. And if you're not willing to put that work in and grind and fail and fail over and over and over and over and over again and continue to show up every day, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I think success and money are just attracted to hustlers and gifted people who actually see what they want and they go for it. I agree with you on the work aspect, but that word for me was always what attracted me. Sure, as a small kid, I always wanted cars, money, and to have it. But what I wanted more was success. I wanted to be successful, and I would do anything to get to there. And I still haven't accomplished that to my level of where that's at. But that's what I work hard for.
Amen, brother. And it's not the end. It's not the end things. It's not the material things. And if it is the material things, you might find success for a short period of time, in my opinion. If that's what the purpose is and that's what's driving you, it's going to be short-lived. You have to have that greater purpose and the why and the cars and the money and whatever else is like great cherry on top, but like that cannot be what you're doing it for. Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
There, one of the big things that stuck out to me about you, Dalton, was when you and I met. We were out at this dinner, and honestly, we just had that great conversation around like personal development, how to move forward in life, and how to just be better. And if there's anything I could say that I've noticed about you, and is why I appreciate your friendship, is one, not only are you very much an upbeat guy, you're very curious. You're very genuinely enthusiastic when you approach life. And those are the things that made me drawn to you. Like our conversation, I was like, dude, we got to be friends. You're just awesome.
I appreciate that.
The best
Vice versa,
energy.
Brother. Vice versa.
And
it's all energy, right? It's all energy. The whole planet, thoughts are, everything's energy. And you can feel that. Again, going back to intuition and, and instinct. That's a huge part of it.
Exactly. So Dalton, we're almost at the end here. We got two last questions for you. One of them being that the name of our podcast is The 1%. And we believe that being a 1%er isn't just about being a billionaire. We believe that 1% is a way of life. I have a few ideologies or ideas of what your view of it might be, but we want to understand from you, what is your version and your view of living a 1% life? How are you striving to be the best in all of your capacities, or what is your just general belief about this terminology?
Yeah. 1% is, it's great, right? Obviously it's the rare air is another one I like, right? You're in the presence of rare air of people that are different, people that think differently. And I think to your point, Ben, you can measure it a million different ways. There's literally a 1% of wealth. And, you have to make X amount of dollars a year and you're in the 1%. You have, right? Whatever it is, there's always a 1% of an entire population. But I would think of it more broadly. It's really about the mindset and the way that you think. And I think that leads to everything else. So if you're thinking like a 1%er, and you could make $0, but if you're truly living and breathing and embodying somebody that makes $1 million a year, or somebody that's worth $100 million or $1 billion or whatever it is, like, in order for it to come true in the future, I truly believe that you have to believe that it is true now. And what's this? I have this book here, The Power of Awareness. One of my great book. Highly recommend it. And something that they always say in there is assume the wish fulfilled. Like, that's how you have to live and think. So whatever it is that you want to do, whatever your goal is, whatever your goals are, like, live and embody that you already are that person doing those things. And that's the fastest way to get there, in my opinion. Again, the work has to follow that, but it starts with the belief, and with the way that you think. And I think that's how I would, define 1%, because there's not that many people that do that. There's not that many people that are aware like that, and aware of that's how things work, and, that think like that. So yeah, that would be my answer.
I hate that this guy had a kid 10, 12 days ago, and he's as cognizant as he is, and healthy as he is, and happy as he is.
I just said, dude, I just said to one of my buddies here in the office that, it doesn't happen often, but I'm having a good brain day. You know how you just, like, some days, like, you just feel like your brain is firing? Today's one of those days. If you guys caught me tomorrow, it might be far less interesting.
I'm not buying
that. But some days, yeah. Some days it's, I don't know. You're just like, all right, today's a good brain day. It's one of those days for me. Yeah.
I love it. We'll call him up and ask him a question tomorrow. I'll be like, what do you think about this? Be like, I don't know.
Sound like
no, I got nothing. I love it. And so, Dalton, tell everybody, how could they get in touch with you if it's for any of the endeavors that you're doing? Like, if someone wants to get insurance from you, or they're trying to get involved with your AI company, or anything at all, like, what are the best methods for people to reach out to you and start doing stuff with you?
Yeah, I would say Instagram is probably, by far the best. That's definitely, the social media that I'm most active on. And that's at D Crossan, Crossan 34. And that has, in my bio too, it has, like, the former NFL, Hoteling Insurance, Neural, like, so all the names of kind of the companies that I'm associated with, and everything it is that I do that I talked about today are there. And yeah, Instagram DM is probably the easiest way. I'd say the second is LinkedIn. I do check that far less frequently than I do Instagram, but those are probably the two best ways. And on LinkedIn, obviously just my name, Dalton Crossan, is how you can find me.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, thanks so much for coming on. It's really a pleasure to be able to have the honor to interview you and call you a friend. Stick around for a moment afterwards. We got a few more things to tell you. But again, you shared so much wealth, so much wisdom. I hope our listeners really took a lot from this, and really just thank you for being here.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you guys as well. This is it's been awesome.
All right. Well, guys, you heard it here. Go check out Dalton. He's got a lot of amazing info and things he could help you with. As always, please like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a comment, and tune in for next time. I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
That was Dalton. See you, everybody.
Bye, guys.